Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rogue Wave podcast, the frequency for all things pop culture and the disruptors behind it. We talk comics, movies, TV, and pop culture every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, right here on Facebook.com/WeAreRogueMatter, YouTube.com/RogueMatter, Twitch.tv/WeAreRogueMatter, and Twitter.com/Rogue_Matter. We take this finely crafted podcast video and turn it into the greatest audio podcast you have ever listened to, available on all major podcasting apps. I'm your host, Michael Dolce, as always, joined by my cohort in crime, the Lord of the Radio himself, Mr. Hassan Godwin. How you doing, sir?
Everything's fine.
I love it. We're getting
The
close
end
to
of
the
the year is
holidays.
coming.
Things are settling in. I like this time of year. Everyone kind of leaves me alone. That's a good thing too. I'm a big fan of that.
Because everyone's busy, right? Everyone's doing their own
Well,
thing
they're
right
or on vacation, whatever the case is. So I will accept either response. Say even our producer Erin, she's got her body is here, her mind is out the door. Her mind is in the holidays, in the holiday spirit. So that's a good thing. Wishing everyone out there a very happy holidays as well from all of us at Rogue Wave. Tonight we got a lot of stuff to go into. We got a great show. We are going to give our best of 2022 because this is our last show of the year, which is very exciting. We're actually going to go into January and continue season 2, and then we will have a brand new season 3 starting February 15th. It's very exciting. Brand new season 3 of Rogue Wave podcast, February 15th. But we're off for the rest of the holidays for sure. And we're going to talk Avatar 2 in a little bit as well, too. But first, I don't know. Thought it was kind of interesting. Yeah, we have our, just a little behind the curtains for everybody. We have our group chat with Aaron and Hassan and I, and it's an endless stream of like, what is DC up to now? And that was, I guess the latest is Henry Cavill is out, or Cahill. I thought it was Cavill for some reason.
It's Cavill.
It is, right?
Yeah, or Cavill.
Cavill, okay. Henry Cavill, he's out. Calf, like a calf. Okay, Henry Cavill. I don't think that's right. Cavill? No. I don't think that's
that guy. The guy who does Superman, though. You're talking about
Gal Gadot, and it is actually pronounced Gadot, as I read online and discovered, much to Steve Hovecki's chagrin many years ago. He's also out, and now we learned today that officially there is no Black Adam 2 sequel coming.
Mm-hmm.
The movie technically, I guess, kind of underperformed when all was said and done. But still, you got The Rock. It did fairly well. It introduced the Justice League. The Justice Society. It was pretty good overall. But it is officially not moving forward. So Dwayne Johnson made an announcement. There was some talk. There was not much speculation. There was basically the speculation was confirmed after Dwayne Johnson failed to promote that Black Adam was going to be on HBO Max. That kind of gave everything away that perhaps things weren't, aren't as in good spirits over there,
Yeah.
Here's the thing though, and here's my take on all this, because immediately hashtag fire James Gunn is happening. Yes. Mm-hmm. Is he cleaning house? Absolutely. Is he starting over? Essentially, yeah. You got the Flash movie coming out. You got Shazam coming out. It sucks because in Avatar 2, they had the trailer for Shazam.
Aquaman. Somewhere along the line.
And Aquaman 2 is coming out, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But the Shazam trailer ran during Avatar 2. And in the back of my head, part of me is like, well, this kind of sucks. This movie's not going to mean anything. The Flash is probably not going to mean anything. I read somewhere that they deleted the scenes in Flash movie now with Gal Gadot and Henry Cavill. Supposedly they were both in it, and now they're not going to be in there. And
I don't know what's worse. It's like is just put the movies out. This reporting on movies, like sports talk, like horse talking or horse trading on these movies, I think it just ruins movies. Because if you didn't know what was supposed to be in a movie, right, when you went to see a movie, you wouldn't know what you're missing. It's some things are cut out of movies for a reason. It's not necessarily a political, catastrophe that something is in a movie or something isn't in a movie, right?
Okay.
Like I saw people talking today about about The Rock, The Rock basically unfollowing Warner Brothers, on
Right.
on social media or whatever, and that's a big deal.
That's the new glove slap.
Yeah, and then he's not going to do a cameo in the Flash, and then people are like the Rock is ruining his public appearance, his public persona. It's like, yeah, but that's um, do you want to be in an Ezra Miller movie right now if you had a choice? So I mean, it doesn't. All of this stuff has nothing to do with the actual content that we're supposed to see, that we've been hearing about. We've been hearing about the Ezra Miller Flash movie for 2 years.
Well, that was before he
And
kidnapped some children and
it doesn't
caused a lot
matter.
of
Like, the
petty
problem is we've been hearing
violence.
about it and who's supposed to be in it, who's not supposed to be in it, who's going to be in it,
Yeah.
is going to be a cameo in it, it's going to be like, Michael Keaton's going to be in it, Henry Cavill's going to be in it, and Gal Gadot's going to be in it, and President Obama's going to be in it. Like, everybody is supposed to be in this movie, and now everybody's not in the movie or whatever, and we just still haven't even seen the movie. And this is probably what kills a lot of these movies, is there's so much. I mean, I know everybody thinks that buzz and publicity, like, there's no such thing as bad publicity. I know everybody thinks that this is a great thing, that things are trending on a regular basis. But when the final product drops and it's lackluster, or it's just average, or God forbid mediocre,
Yeah.
then then the vitriol against it is even higher, because you don't get, oh, that was a really quaint movie, that was a really enjoyable little film that I just watched. It's like Solo again. Solo's a great movie, did okay, but it's a Star Wars movie, so it's a flop because it didn't do the astronomical numbers that a Star Wars movie should do, right? All this horse trading is basically killing the natural effect of the entertainment value of these movies, in my opinion.
Well,
we should
let
know
me ask you
about
a
the
question.
drama between, why would The Rock not being able to do another Black Adam movie? Why should that affect Flash at all? Before we even get to see it.
See, I would disagree with you on one end of this, though. I actually do love all the sports talk radio, and I can also enjoy the game if the game turns out to have some sort of exciting plays in it. And so I think all that goes away if the movie's actually good. I think what we're finding is most of these movies, they're good, but there's nothing to write home about. There's nothing that's going to go out of their ways to say, like, this is the greatest, comic book movie now I've ever seen.
Well,
They've
that's what
all
I'm
follow
talking
the same
about.
formula. They all follow the same,
How
the
many
same special
movies?
effects.
How
What's
many
that?
movies do achieve the greatest, film of all time?
I will
Like,
say that
most films just check a box. Most stories are basically checking a box. It's just whether or not you like it, you enjoy being in that box or not. That's the
but
thing.
also how much you enjoy being in that box, right? Because I mean, look, I could watch Shang-Chi and go, that was an enjoyable movie, and I can't remember. Actually, I know Shang-Chi's a bad example. I can remember a lot that happened in that movie. Thor: Love and Thunder. I barely remember anything that happened in that movie. And it was whatever. I didn't feel bad about the experience, but I walked away going, it was whatever. There's a lot. Eternals. I can't tell you what happened in that movie.
I
There's
understand
a
that,
lot of
but I
movies
mean,
you go into, but meanwhile, there's other movies I go into and go, you know what? I really. We'll talk about it next. Avatar 2. Like, man, that was an impressionable movie. Black Panther 2, I thought was a very impressionable, movie. I thought a lot of it.
yeah, but I mean, how many movies are supposed to be memorable forever? Like, not a lot. Like, anything that's memorable that long is considered a phenomenon for a reason.
Right.
That's it's not, to expect that for every movie is kind of.
No, again, I don't think you're expecting it for every movie, but my point being is
You just
is
said
that
you're
I can
talking.
enjoy the sports talk around it if the movie delivers something memorable. It doesn't have to be the greatest
movie. Because of the
ever.
sports talk, the movie now has to deliver something special in general.
I think the movie should anyway, right? I mean, isn't that the point?
It depends on what you consider special, though.
It just but if you're saying
that
the
nebulous
sports talk around it it makes it to the point where it can't deliver anything, then I would again. I think it. I think it just depends on your perspective in terms of what you're going in there to enjoy to begin with. Because I think a movie can still overcome. My point is, I don't think these movies are exceptional in any way to
Of
begin
course,
with, and I don't think the sports talk is the reason it's not hitting that mark
you're
for
kind of
anybody.
making my point though. Like that's what I'm saying. Like in order for movies to live up to the hype now, they have to be exceptional, and very few things are exceptional because that's why we have a term for things that are exceptional. So it kind of it's its own self defeating equation right there, because like
Yeah,
I want
I don't
I
think
want.
one necessarily equals the other in every case. In fact,
I
I
know
would say
you
most
don't.
cases
I
it's just
agree
the
that
movies
you
are just not
don't.
as good.
Yeah, I
Like I
understand
think
how
movie
you
making in
feel.
general. I don't know. I think movie making in general
I
just
get how
isn't
you feel
isn't
about
good.
it, dude. I just
Yeah.
don't agree with you.
All right. Well, my question to you is going to be this though, because everyone's going on Twitter and saying fire James Gunn and this and that.
Because of
Would
the horse
you?
talk. If nobody
What's
knew
that?
what he was, if because of all the horse talk, if no one knew what he was doing behind the scenes, and he was in there cleaning house so that he can make a bunch of movies, nobody would be saying fire James Gunn right now.
Here's the thing though. This is what I would say though. This is my question to you. What would you, if you had to sum up the DCEU in its current state? Where do you put it in the grand scheme of things? And you can't obviously answer this question without looking at something like Marvel, but you could throw in something like the Avatar franchise. You could throw in something, um, to that extent. Would you deem it its current course as a long-term successful course? Like everything that Zack Snyder had done up to this point, because it's basically been the Snyderverse up to this point. Do you think that it could ultimately pan out to be as successful or near as successful as what Marvel has accomplished already in its
No,
current
but I
state?
mean, what could be as successful as Marvel has been?
I
You
think the
know,
DCEU has all of the tools in the arsenal to be as successful if properly handled. I would put it
I
somewhere in the
mean,
middle,
that
personally.
would depend. I mean, there are extenuating circumstances. I mean, Marvel is considered a phenomenon because it's a near impossibility to do it. Like then the closest thing is maybe the James Bond franchise, and a lot of those are hit and miss. You know, that's it's just acknowledged for its staying power and how long
Yeah.
it's sustained a franchise. But and at a certain point, almost every one of Marvel's movies was $1 billion movie. At a certain point, at a peak,
Sure.
at its peak. So I
Yeah.
mean, there are very few utter disasters in the Marvel. Like there are no course corrections. There are
Hmm.
no pivots. Very strong. Like okay, we're never doing that again. Even Star
Right.
Wars can't say that. So I don't think any. I think using that as a business model I think you could use it as a business model for your planned content, but to use it as a gauge of success, I think is self
Hmm.
defeating for them. For us, of course we're going to judge them by any those metrics because those are the metrics that we know. But I
See,
think
I
if
would put
you
them
were,
somewhere in the
if
middle, though, personally, of those metrics. I would put them right now
but
that
you are
they've done
using
a lot
those
of course
metrics
correction.
though, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what I'm talking about. Like
Yeah.
it's. I think if they use that metric, I think that's self defeating. We don't have a choice but to use that because that is our
Right.
frame of reference. But I think if they use it, you know that's I think what's been the problem is they've never been able to allow their universe to sustain itself and to take on a
Right.
life of its own and to build it because they've been chasing after the ghost of
Right.
Marvel money since they started it, and I think it's a near impossibility. It's like okay, all we have to do is become a genius, and then we could be like Einstein. It's like okay, well,
Well, I mean,
your starting
look, it's
point
it's.
is impossible.
I don't think it is though. That's my. But look, that's like sitting there saying, well, you can't be as good as you can't be. Your franchise can't be as good as that franchise. So don't even bother trying.
I didn't say
No, you
that.
should try. In fact, DCEU should be just as popular and just as financially successful because it has the exact same blueprint
No,
that
no, no.
MCU does in terms of the properties, in terms of the IP.
I didn't say that you shouldn't strive for that kind of
So
exceptionality. I said that they
where they
shouldn't
are right
use it
now,
as a business model. They shouldn't use that level of success to gauge their success. You can use a business model, but if you don't follow that model exactly
yeah,
like the other company did, then you cannot expect to garner the same success level. And
they don't have to use the same
DCEU,
business model. You're right. But they have the tools in the arsenal to equal the success,
how?
regardless.
How
Because
did
they
Marvel
have
do
the
it?
IP to rival the level of interest and the level of fandom that the MCU does. Look, the MCU right now,
So did
you could
X-Men.
argue because we're into phase 4 and 5, because they have lesser known characters, they're at a very interesting crossroads, right? Their most popular characters, the ones people grew up loving, the storylines people grew up reading, and the actors they've fallen in love with playing these characters have now aged on and have now passed on. So they're at an interesting crossroads. It'll be interesting to see how they handle phase 4 and 5, if it's going to be just as successful or less successful or whatever the case might be, or if the MCU might it can sustain it. But that being said, DCU has Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, Aquaman. I mean, these are all characters that rival any Marvel character that's out there. Captain America, Iron Man, Spider-Man, in terms of just ingrained pop culture popularity. So they can be, in theory, as successful as opposed to, I don't know, The Sire starting out, which has a small fan base and has no brand recognition. I'm just using that's a little shameless self plug for me, but the DC characters can be just as successful. Where they are right now, I say they're in the middle, right? I think they were in the worst shape they were ever in when Batman vs Superman came out, and when the Justice League followed up with that, because they clearly, like you said, and like we've both agreed on, hastened to try to follow this business model without actually letting the characters organically get there, to the point where and let these movies organically get to the point they tried to rush to the finish line,
Yeah.
and their wheels kind of came apart.
Your
They
question to
did
me
some course
wasn't
correcting. Hang on, they've done some course correcting since then to get to a point where, hey, look at that. Aquaman was both financially successful and a good movie. Black Adam, not so, Black Adam kind of in between. You've had some hits, you've had some misses. Wonder Woman, the first Wonder Woman, hey, look at that. That was actually an enjoyable movie and it made a lot of money. Okay. They had enough wins to where they were kind of in between. They're not at Marvel's level, agreed. But that's the point they're at right now where James Gunn is taking over. And James Gunn had a decision to make, which was, do I continue what is going, what has come before and build on that, or do I wipe the slate clean? He has wiped the slate clean. I think he's just decided he can't do this half pregnant anymore. He either had to commit fully to what Zack Snyder had built or start all over again. And I think what we're seeing with all this news is,
that's a completely different question than you asked me, though. I just want to clarify that.
okay.
Okay. So
Okay.
yes, and yes, but that's not how the conversation started. So I agree with you. Now we can keep going because, like,
Okay.
you were like, no, I disagree, but you're disagreeing with me about something that you didn't even ask me. So
I
it's
asked
kind of
you, what is the state of the DCEU right now
right.
in
And
competing with Marvel?
I just said it. You can't compare it to Marvel. You didn't. That's technically
You
not the
think okay?
question
You
you
think it's
asked.
two different questions. I think it's the same question. So you're basically saying you agree the fact that James Gunn had to either S or get off the pot at that point, either fully commit and dive into what was going on, or start all over. Are you okay with his decision, which is ultimately looks like, we don't know for sure, but the actions kind of translate that he's officially starting over?
I don't think. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think he has any choice. I think it's a disaster. I think it's a total disaster. Um, because you do have, if you talk about brand recognition, you do have the brand recognition of a lot of movies that are pretty successful. They're money makers. They're not, but they're chasing gold. They're chasing the
Right.
gold over the hill, as opposed to the gold that they already have. I think there was a way to course correct where you can this is a disaster. I don't agree with this statement I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think there could have been a way you could course correct where you could there's a potential you can make everybody happy, where you don't completely erase the Snyderverse, but you don't follow the same path. So it's like you don't erase the last 10. That's a decade's worth of filmmaking that you are just going to throw out the window. You
Right.
know, the same with Wonder Woman. Okay, Wonder Woman 1984 didn't do that great. But the first one was their first foray into near $1 billion into near Marvel
Right.
money, and so is Aquaman. You're getting rid of both of those. You're getting rid of your Superman. Now, a lot of people are saying this guy is the definitive Superman. I don't know if I agree with that. That's fine. It's
Yeah, I don't know.
everything is
I
about
don't think he. I think he
different
got a bit of
opinion.
a raw deal, but
I don't
at
even
the
know if he
same
got
time,
done. I mean, the raw deals in his first movie wasn't that good. Sorry, I don't. I know a lot
nor
of
was
people
his second
disagree.
movie good either.
I
Nor was that third movie he was in very good either.
it yeah, but it's not. I'm talking about like in a sense of a story to build on. There's no story. Like that's the problem with a lot of movies these days. Isn't necessarily their entertainment value or whatever. If you're trying to set up a franchise, you got to write in mind of a franchise. So if you tell this like long over bloated story where it's like, all right, well, didn't you just destroy Metropolis? Why are we in Metropolis again? Little
Right.
things like that kind of like, you're already erasing things. You're already course correcting, right? They had to go out of their way in B versus Superman to say that, we move this out of the city to make sure that this battle with Doomsday is far away from the city so that we're not killing as many people as the first movie killed.
Right.
We didn't kill 1 billion people this time, even though we nuked Superman right over Metropolis. Okay. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of argument to be made as to where they went wrong. I'm not
Yeah.
talking about whether or not they made a bunch of great movies. But they did, however, establish some really iconic people who are synonymous with those roles now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there hasn't been a Shazam, there hasn't been a
Yeah.
Captain Marvel since the 70s, right?
Right.
So that's established. There's never been a Black Adam. There wasn't a Dr. Fate. There's never been a Hawkman. So we've seen these things. They've given life to them. They exist. And now you're going to be like, all right, erase all that and I'll start over. I think that just makes it into a jumbled mess. Now, he could probably pull it off. I mean, if anyone's going to be able to pull it off, James Gunn is at least going to come up with something very interesting to look at.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I don't know if I would consider it anything other than a mess at this point.
What's interesting about it too, and we'll go to break on that note, is his own contributions to this universe theoretically could get wiped out as well too. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I doubt it will though. I think we'll see Peacemaker season 2. All right, what do you guys think? The current state of the DCEU. When we come back, it is making big bucks at the box office, but is it any good? We'll dive into Avatar 2 when we return. Welcome back to the Rogue Wave podcast. All right, a big movie finally arrived. It's been interesting. It's been an interesting year because of all the COVID rescheduling of movies. I mean, Morbius got moved like 1 million times earlier this year. To earlier this year, I should say. We had a large gap in between. I think it was like Thor: Love and Thunder and like the next thing that came out. But now over the last few weeks, we've had another like outpouring of movies. We had Black Adam, we had Black Panther 2, and finally a movie that took 13 years in the
13
making.
Years. Yeah.
13 years. Finally dropped. Avatar 2: Way of the Water has dropped. And I got to tell you, James Cameron has a way of doing things. First of all, he makes exceptional movies. Talk about something that has hype, right? This had a ton of hype going into it because it's like, well, it's Avatar. Is it going to not only perform at the box office, but is it going to be any good? He makes quality movies. Was it the greatest thing I've ever seen in terms of like, wow, this movie's going to live with me forever? No. But did he make a 3-hour and 12-minute movie feel a lot, like it went by like that and was so engaging and involving? Was it a visual stunner? Yes. I mean, yes to all these things. I mean, I remember looking up at the clock being like, wow, it's 4. I went in at 1:00. It's 4:00 now. And I'm not bored. There was never any sequences where I'm like, wow, this movie's really dragging on. I mean, there's some stuff that, I'm sure you could always trim the fat, so to speak. And he also makes movies that are really good. I don't understand how he does it to where I'm rooting for them to kill the humans. They're all, he did that in the first Avatar. I'm like, yeah, kill those humans. Oh, that's us. Oh man. But he does it. He pulls it off. He does it. He pulls it off in an enjoyable way. I got to say, I walked out of Avatar 2. I'm not a big Avatar guy. Like, I'm not like, there's some people that are flipping out over Avatar. They're like, they love the universe and all that. I really enjoyed the first Avatar. I really enjoyed the second Avatar. I will happily go see the next 12 Avatars or whatever he has planned.
Yeah, if we get I know we're going to get the third one. I don't know if
yes.
then he suggests he might stop after that anyway. So
yeah,
if Avatar lives on beyond that, yeah, it's a very entertaining movie. It's a grand spectacle of a movie. Long time, long wait, long wait for that movie. But I mean, at least it's not a carbon copy of the first movie to the point where you're like, oh my God, did I wait this long for him to just reboot his own series?
Yeah.
So it's at least, if you wanted to know what happened to all those characters right after the first one, then it does have sequelitis to a level of the first one ended in a point where you didn't need to know what happened next. Like, it's like, okay,
right.
I guess the humans won, and there's peace on Earth and goodwill towards men forever. And Awa is healed, and the humans have gone. But now the humans came back. The humans came back like 5 years later, and they built a city. So
it's like 10 years later, I think, if you think about the kids, like the age of the kids and things like that. So
if you look at the cities that they built, they had to have been there for longer than it took for us to rejoin them. So that's why I'm saying 4 or 5 years.
Right?
Because that city has had to have been around long enough. They've had to have been there long enough to have built a city. So,
right.
That's what I mean. So anyway, I think it was great. I don't have a problem with it. I never had a problem. I never bet against it. I always knew it was going to be. But I mean, the movies aren't really, the stories are not, he has a way of doing stories that are not really that hard to get your mind wrapped around. And then he dazzles you with the spectacle. Now that's his gift. Not a lot of people can do simplistic movies that don't feel simplistic.
Yeah.
And that's a trick, because a lot of people.
It's funny you mentioned that. It's funny you mentioned that exact point though, because I felt like that. After coming out of that movie, I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, wow, there really wasn't much to the plot, and there didn't need to be. It's guy wants revenge on the family. Family moves to another place to avoid them. They eventually meet. They're gonna battle each other. Like, it's really not complicated, but it doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, yeah, it still takes skill to do something simple.
I agree.
Like to make some. I know. All right. Yes. Yes. You're right.
Keep going. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to cut you off.
It Anyway, yeah, I enjoyed it. It was a good film. I'll be there for the third one, which is going to be a year from now. So, we'll see.
2024, I thought.
I think 2023, just Christmas 2023. So technically, to the before 2024. But I don't know. I think they made them back to back. I think they filmed them
They
together.
did make them back to back, but I still think I read somewhere today it was like 2024. It's coming out December.
All right, maybe so. That's stupid though.
I agree.
Because I mean, this one's not making the money that they thought it was going to make in the first place. Because
right.
It's been 10 years, and also because, look, nobody wants to talk about it, but no one's going to the movies because people are afraid of getting sick. So it's still a thing. It's still a thing.
Okay.
There's one outlier. This whole year was Top Gun. It's one outlier. Everything else kind of underperformed this year. So there's an issue there, you know. And this movie
look,
this
some
movie
people
is not
are also,
you know,
they need value to go to the theater. I think personally, I don't necessarily think it's about the sick part. I mean, I think that could contribute to it. I think it's also, you know, what gets people out of the house to go see these films. I think inflation has a big part of it too. I mean, the film, you know, in general.
Well, okay, this movie is the sequel to the greatest to the highest grossing movie of all time.
Right.
So if this is not
from 13 years ago, though.
But it still hasn't been beat even by the recent highest grossing movies of quote unquote all time. So I mean, that's what I'm saying. If there's no cachet for that, then there's some other circumstance.
I mean, look, it is performing slightly lower than expectations, but I think it will reach $1 billion. I think it will, because it's a good movie. I think that's in general. I think that will help.
But that's what I'm saying. It doesn't necessarily. I mean, I'm sure it will do well also, but it's going to take a long time to get there by metrics of Hollywood standards, right?
Correct.
So
I agree with that too.
I think you have to add in the extent, because there's nothing wrong with this movie. It's a Hollywood spectacle. It's not a you know, kind of a politically preachy. Well, it is, but it's old-fashioned political preachy.
Yeah, I agree.
Know?
I agree.
So
I agree 100%.
There shouldn't be anything offensive for anybody to, you know.
Sure.
So, you know, there's no controversy to it other than how long it took to come out.
Yes.
And how much James Cameron said it needed to make in order to be profitable, which again, that's the horse talk, that if he kept his mouth shut about that, I don't think it would have been something that's on our minds in particular at this point.
I don't think it's a trap. I don't think it's going to make or break someone from going to the theaters to see it or not.
I didn't say it was going to do that. I said it's on our mind. It's a metric that we're adding into whether or not we regard it as a success or failure, and it's something that it's a kind of a forced error. Because if you didn't say it, we wouldn't be thinking it.
Sure.
You know? So that's what I mean when I say that. So there are extenuating circumstances to why things are underperforming, you know?
Yeah.
And yes, I don't disagree with you 100%. Quality of content is definitely a high up factor. But I don't think that movies have dipped so far in quality in just a couple of years to warrant the fact that you know, the entire industry needs a full overhaul. I think there's
I don't think the industry needs an overhaul. I think there's things that are working against it right now outside of outside of the actual films themselves too. I think there's a glut of this kind of material. Avatar seemed bold and new and different in 2009. Now, I honestly, because every movie is a big spectacle, it's sometimes hard to discern what is a spectacle versus what is not. Like I said, you mentioned COVID. I mentioned inflation. I think both of those factors, factor into it as well.
Well, that's also what I'm talking about with the horse talk. You know, it's like everything is built up into a point where if it's not a religious experience.
But I think if you think about it too, and you mentioned Top Gun being the outlier. Top Gun was a big spectacle movie that did not rely on. It relied on human beings doing human being things, and had special effects that, again, probably all CGI. I'm not going to say yes or no. I mean, but at the same time, looks like real fighter pilots and real aerial combat. I think that actually has a huge thing to do with it. I think that this glut of comic book movies and franchise movies that look like video games. I mean, look, Avatar is beautiful. It's a video game, though. It looks like I'm watching a video game unfold. Better done, don't get me wrong. I mean, I think the facial expressions and the movements, I still marvel at what he's able to do. But I feel like I feel like something like Indiana Jones next year is gonna break the bank, assuming it's a good movie. If it's a good movie because that is a human character at the forefront, I think is going to be. I think that's it. It becomes an outlier amongst a superpowered fantasy sci-fi driven like stock of films that we've now seen in the past 2-3 years. I also think what was interesting about this movie, just getting to the actual movie itself, it had a feel like The Matrix a little bit, in the sense that there was so much time between the first Matrix, which also ended on kind of like a happy ending kind of thing, to the point where it's like, do you need a sequel? I don't think we need a sequel, but okay, you're giving us a sequel anyway. The story itself didn't need to continue in my brain after I saw the first Matrix because, it reached a very satisfying resolution. So did Avatar 1. And the first, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes of Avatar 2, my brain had this like feeling of going back to the feeling I had when I watched the second Matrix, being like, man, do we really want to mess with what worked? Do you really need to go back here because you ended on such a good note? We don't need to go back here. But luckily, this did not end the way Matrix, what is it, Revolutions, or which one was the second one?
Uh,
Was it Revolutions
Reloaded.
or was it Reloaded? Yeah, didn't have to. That ultimately went that way. Avatar 2, though, at least went the way of, hey, I'm really glad you gave me a sequel because this was highly enjoyable, as opposed to Matrix 2, where I'm like, man, this was just terrible. Like, don't you shattered the glass. You had a perfect ending. You had a perfect movie. Should just let it lie at that point. So, anything else you pull from this movie, the actual content of the movie that stood out to you?
I mean, it does have the prevailing problem. It's not a complete story because there's a sequel. There'll be another one. But I mean, I think the thing that stood out to me the most was how it kind of was able to pick up from where it left off, and I was right back into it, as opposed to without a lot of setup. And with me, just like it was with Infinity War, most of my the most of the alluring things I find about these movies is how the story is told, not necessarily what happens in the story, but like if you hear the premise of a story, like you hear that, oh, Thanos is trying to get this stuff for this gauntlet and he's going to erase humanity. I'm like, all right, how would you tell a story like that? That's what I find fascinating. And then when I see it all fall together and I see how they're going to do it, even if I can predict what's going to happen next or whatever template or story that they're using, is still kind of excites me. So going into Avatar, I'm like, all right, you've achieved the first one, because the first one is a visual tour de force.
Sure.
But
technological tour de force too.
Can you apply three-dimensionality to these characters enough so that the characters are the driving force in it now and not the spectacle? And I think he was able to do that. And I think he was smart to add the children. So we're not just, watching, we're not watching a couple that got together in the first one and now they have marital problems in the second one or whatever, because they upped the ante and they moved on from that. So I think if by him concentrating on characters, bringing some characters back, like the second one's a very character-driven movie, kind of like the same as Empire Strikes Back. So that kind of, that leads into, now you're curious about what's going to happen with the characters now, instead of, what's Pandora going to look like next time?
Yeah.
So I think
what's also interesting too is the decision to focus on the children, more specifically the second son and the adopted daughter. I've seen it go wrong in so many other movies. Maybe it helps because of the CGI, the way it's executed. You can get the kind of performances out of it that you need. But I thought it was just excellent. Like I didn't find myself annoyed. Sometimes I would sometimes these kind of situations, I find it annoying because I'm like, nah, I came here to see the dad again, or I came here to see the dad and the mom again. And in this particular case, he managed to do it in a way where I'm like, no, this is like, I'm on board for his character arc. I'm on board for this journey that's happening with these characters. So, all right, what do you guys think? Chime in. Have you seen Avatar 2? Have you contributed to its global box office? James Cameron needs that donation as soon as possible to break even. We all know that. Give us your thoughts. We will comment back. When we return, we put a bow on 2022. It's hard to believe, but it's over. We will give you our best, just our best, period. What we thought was our best comic movie and or TV show of 2022 when we return. Welcome back to the Rogue Wave podcast. All right, it's the end of the year. It's 2022. What a long, strange journey. We've come out on the other side of it intact, and we've actually had a lot of pop culture to talk about and a lot of movies, TV shows, and comics. I will defer. Do you want to go heads or tails? Do you want to go first or second? Do you want to give us, Hassan, your best, or you want to hear my best first?
No, you can go first.
All right. A lot of stuff out there. And I got to tell you, if you've been listening to the show, you can kind of hear my point of view has changed over the last couple of years. I'm actually kind of sick of all the comic book movies. I feel like they're all the same. I feel like I'm getting a lot of the same. I feel like the stuff that I am responding to is less about, who's going to be in the next Avengers movie, and more like a show like Three Pines, where we had actress Sarah Booth on last week. And we'll have another actor, coming on in a couple weeks from that show as well, too. More human-driven stories. And one show in particular that I love. Now, I'm going to give you my favorite TV show and my favorite comic book, because those are the two things that I enjoyed the most. Because as much as I'm not as excited for the comic book movies as I was in the past, comics still king in my book. So I have a tie, okay? TV show-wise, Severance. It's on Apple Plus. I got turned on to it from a friend of the show, Chris Simon, who's one of the editors at IDW. And she's like, you got to watch it. It's so trippy. It's so crazy. And it was one of those shows. A lot of times we watch these things for homework, right? We're going to review something. We're going to talk about something. We want to discuss something.
No.
This show, none of that. There was nothing involved in me watching the show. And I remember.
And yet we never talked about it.
No, because it wasn't homework. It was something, it had already come out. The show had already been out for months. And I said, what the heck is this thing doing at Comic-Con? Like, why is there a big Severance poster at Comic-Con? And my friend Chris was like, you got to check it out. It's amazing. And I did. And so it's great. Very human driven, very very high concept. But it's very easy to kind of understand after the first, episode or two, when you get into the world of what they're building, to where basically what happens, you are cut off. Your work self is cut off from your personal self. So this company that they work for, you have to go through a process called severance to work there. And it's a brain procedure that actually they will physically give you surgery, so that when you step on the elevator every morning at 9:00 to go upstairs into this place of business, the next thing you remember is you're getting off the elevator. The hours of 9 to 5 don't exist. And simultaneously, your work self then activates. And so it's almost like you have it's almost like two different people sharing the same body, because then they start to have all of these, kind of different personalities kind of building from it. And eventually, the work selves desperately want to understand what is happening on the outside when they're not around. And on the flip side, the personal people start to realize that something is up with this company, and maybe this thing that they signed up for isn't for the best. It's very Lost-esque in terms of creating mystery boxes. However, you'll be happy to hear it definitely delivers answers, as opposed to just kind of asking questions constantly. It still asks questions. I think it's very Lost-esque in the sense of the backdrop of it. The company that they work for, it's not this is not an ordinary company. Put it this way: what this company is doing, there's some weird stuff going on. and I don't know what's happening with the company, but something weird's happening. The people who work there are very strange, and not just the people that went through severance, the actual actual people working there. And it ends on an amazing double, hit you surprise with an amazing cliffhanger. So can't wait for season 2. That is my unabashed winner of 2022. And again, sci-fi, but not over the top comic booky. So Severance gets my best of 2022. Tying it is in the comics, Gambit. Chris Claremont with Will Portacio covers, relaunched, takes place in the niche of the Jim Lee era, the Chris Claremont Jim Lee era, between issues 266 and 268 of Uncanny X-Men, or I guess technically 266 and 270, right? So there's a span of time where Storm got reverted back to her childlike physical body, and that's how she met Remy LeBeau, Gambit, and there was always kind of an implication that they went on multiple adventures in between.
For the people at home. It's LeBeau for the people at home, but okay. It's not how the French pronounce it, but all right, go ahead.
That's true, but I think X-Men, I think the cartoon show pronounced it that way too, so I feel pretty good about that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great. It's nostalgic, but it also kind of tells new stuff. It just feels like the kind of comics I grew up loving. So that is my personal favorite, my personal best of 2022. And I highly recommend it. All right, shoot, pal. What do you got?
For television?
No, just in general. Just pick one, or if you have something that is just as good tie-wise, you can tie it. I didn't pick a movie. I thought we've had some good movies. I can't pick anything. I don't remember a single movie I saw that I thought was worthy of my best of. So it doesn't have to be a movie. It could be anything.
All right. For television, it would be The Peripheral, which was
I've heard good things about that.
Fantastic. It's basically about it starts off, it's supposed to be about a virtual reality game. And the problem is, if I tell you anything more about it, everything becomes a spoiler after that.
Got it.
But it's really wonderful. And I've seen it's really convoluted and really heady. Like, it's really trippy.
I've seen commercials for it, or I've seen like promos for it, and I'm like, I feel like I would like this. So
yeah, I don't know if you would or not, because your tastes are weird. But it's not. Also, it's not very mystery boxy to that extent. The entire story is a mystery box, so it doesn't keep throwing curves at you. But it is really twisted.
Okay.
So that was that's for TV. I don't have a comic book. I don't read comic books as much as I used to, because it is what it is. I mean, I did read Bram Stoker's Dracula again, because Mike Mignola is his adaptation of that film is almost like image for image. It's probably one of the best comic book adaptations of a film I've ever read. And then there's The Batman. That was my movie, the best of. And for what it was, like, okay, I'm not a huge fan of the Nolan Batman movies. I like the way they looked. Kind of love the grittiness of it, or I don't know, the fantasy surrealism of it. But I didn't think the stories were very good, and I didn't think that that Christian Bale, as great an actor as he is, watch Ford versus Ferrari if you want to see an amazing Christian Bale film. I didn't think he made a good Batman. That's my issue. I think the weakest thing in those movies was his Batman. Now, not him, but his Batman, his portrayal of Batman. Also, Nolan had this very very strange aversion to showing you any iconoclastic imagery of Batman. So it was always kind of this weird kind of stilted imagery of him like standing on a building or whatever, anything that made Batman kind of famous in the last, like, say 30 years of Batman. It just was kind of in there, but it wasn't. But the Batman with James Patterson, right? Which I didn't think
Robert
Pattinson.
So
See,
yeah,
there you
no,
go.
completely wrong. You got it
Yeah.
completely wrong.
Well, I like Patterson too.
James
but
Patterson. I don't.
he's a
That
writer.
sounds like a
He's
famous
a novelist.
name.
He's a novelist. Sorry.
But he was like he invented Tupperware or something. But
no, he is a novelist. Anyway, well, author, novelist.
Definitely not
Aaron,
the Batman then. Oh man, I just googled what he looks like. He doesn't. Yeah, he would not fit in the Batman.
Anyway,
costume.
it's a really solid portrayal of the Batman character. It really gets into the head of Bruce Wayne without relitigating the death of his parents, and without retreading some ground, even though it is kind of got a very, very much a Batman Year One vibe, because he's very young as Batman in the story. And it looks like the Nolan Batman movies. So I got the best of both worlds. I got a really good Batman, a really good story,
Right.
and then I got the imagery that I really enjoyed. It's a little long, and it didn't crack $1 billion. So by our metrics, it disappointed at the box office. But I think for me, that was my cinematic height of the year 2022.
All right, I love it. I love everything. We got a normal year of movies and TV shows and some good comics that came out along there. Let us know your thoughts. Put it in the comment field. We'd love to hear your recommendations, things we should be checking out. No podcast next week. We are off. It's the holidays. Hassan, have a very wonderful holiday week, and Aaron as well, our producer, and for everyone here at Rogue Matter. Big stuff coming. February 15th is the day where we get a whole lot of big changes. So go to the Rogue Matter site right now, roguematter.com. Everything's still free. Still going to be up there. You can preview McBride and Groom #2. You can check out the entire graphic novel Making Markham. You can check out the entire series of Time Trader. It's all up there. It's free, and it's for you guys to consume. We will see you guys next year. Hi guys, Mike Dolce here from the Rogue Wave podcast. If you like this video, please feel free to like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. It really helps us out. Leave a comment, let us know what you'd like to see in future episodes, and tune in every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern for a brand new